This is an interview with Adam Cecil, a social worker in Michigan, as part of the SAMHSA project to get the word out about what social workers do for a living, how they got there, and what motivates them. Hello, Adam. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me.
Good. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us what you do now, and then I'll ask you a series of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Adam Cecil. I have two jobs, as you would say. I work part-time at Michigan Medicine on one of the ICUs, the trauma burn ICU, and I do that one half of the week. And then the other half of the week, I own my own private practice where I see individual therapy clients. I do that virtually from home. And then I'm on the board of directors for the Michigan National Alliance of Social Work chapter.
Quite a handful of projects. Good for you. Thanks for being willing, on top of all that, to speak with me today. I appreciate it much. Can you provide a short summary of what you do in your work, if you don't mind, in both roles? I think folks would like to know what both of those kind of practices look like.
Yeah, so I kind of think social work kind of tends to, it's such a diverse, wonderful field where we can do lots of different things. Mentally, I have it broken down into, there's two primary types of jobs, I would say, which is like case management jobs, where you're helping, people achieve things. And then, clinical, like therapy-based jobs where you're doing individual therapy. So, and I like both worlds. And I feel like right now I've got a balance of both those parts of me that I really enjoy. So on the trauma burn ICU at Michigan Medicine, I once had a friend tell me that when you come to the hospital, your life's usually in a transition. And I think as a social worker there, I'm there to help people with that transition. So no one plans to be there. People need help getting time off work. They need guidance about what services are available, what options. They need emotional support and coping. So really just like kind of going in and meeting with families and patients and seeing how I can help them basically go through this very difficult transition. Michigan Medicine has a very supportive community with donors that help patients with gas cards or meal reimbursements and other things. And so we have a pretty strong team where we try to help folks get what they need during that time. So that's the Michigan Medicine side of things. I've also worked at other hospitals as well and other case management jobs. But that's what I'm doing right now on that side of it.
Yeah. How long have you been there? You mind if I ask?
Not that long. I would say I just had my 6-month review not too long ago. I've been doing that. But before that, I worked at a inpatient psychiatric unit at a different hospital. I've worked at a federally qualified health center and different jobs along the way. Yeah.
That background, I ask you that because a lot of people who think about social work or don't know about social work are always fascinated with the range of settings that one can work in. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it much.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I stopped you. You're about to talk about your private practice, I think.
Yeah. So then the other one is seeing clients, on an individual basis, through the private practice. I originally started doing individual therapy at the federally qualified health center I worked at, which is basically a primary care office. It's called Packard Health. It's here in Ypsilanti. It serves underserved populations. So I was doing a lot of therapy there. And when I left there, some of those clients followed me to my own private practice. And, that's meeting with people one-on-one, individually, helping people heal and recover from trauma, reframe and shape their identity in a more strength-based approach, helping them achieve higher levels of function and achievement. And, I think that both jobs are very satisfying in their own way. I don't think there's a replacement or substitute for that individual therapy session and to see someone change on that intimate one-on-one level. And then on the case management side too, you're not with those folks as long, but it's helpful to see things go well in their own way.
What a fascinating contrast in some ways, huh? Two settings. I hadn't even thought about the length of time by which you see somebody. What a difference there. Yeah, thanks. Could you describe what you see as the purpose of both of those positions you have? Maybe there's a common purpose, or if you could just talk about that a bit.
Yeah, I think that in the individual therapy role, it's really to, um, I have a trauma-based lens and approach. I think most therapists would, but I think mission one is to help people through their life history. And as a therapist, you should be able to see their whole life over time and hold it in mind and help them, process. Usually what happens with traumatic events is people internalize certain negative images about themselves from those traumatic events. Usually they happen at a time where, especially if you're a child and you're young, you can't make too much sense of the world. But those issues remain, and maybe they haven't been reprocessed or challenged. So I really think that at the core of individual therapy is helping people with their self-identity and how they see themselves and feel about themselves, alleviating shame and guilt and healing trauma. On the case management side, I think that it is really helping people in difficult transitions. I think that because I have a lot of repetition in dealing with auto accidents and what the claims are like, or dealing with, house fires and what services are there. Basically,
sure.
I'm there because I get the reps in and I understand the system. And when someone comes to me and they don't know how to navigate the system, they have someone there that kind of is, well, I've only been there 6 months, but becoming an expert, right? So helping people navigate systems on the second one for sure.
That's a great way to put it too. I think that you've done a good job of describing sort of the guts of what we do and why we do it in both those settings. Yeah. Thanks a lot. How did you, if you don't mind, talk about the education that you needed to get to this position and maybe the experience to do these two types of positions you hold?
Yeah, so I originally got my undergrad in sociology from Grand Valley State University. I didn't particularly know what I was going to do when I went to college. But sociology caught my attention, and that was great, and I enjoyed that a lot. When I graduated, there wasn't a phenomenal, with the bachelor's in sociology. The range of jobs open to you isn't as wide as I was later learned when you get the master's in social work. So I got my bachelor's in sociology. I worked in after-school programs. I did child protective services. And then I went back for my master's at Eastern Michigan University, got my master's in social work there. I did the part-time route, did a couple of internships. Beautiful. Yeah, and so that's the education that I've had. And I graduated, I think, in 2018, I think. I've been working with my MSW since then.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Let me ask you about that before we talk about experience. The part-time route, I think a lot of people aren't even aware they have MSW programs that are part-time. Can you talk about how that was maybe helpful to you in getting your graduate degree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're right. The part-time isn't always as well known. And for me, as someone who did not get my bachelor's in social work, because based on what bachelor's you get, it can increase the length of your master's time. Sure. I basically did a 4-year part-time program at Eastern, and I took a year off at one point, so 5 years in total. But that allowed me to maintain full-time employment.
Yeah.
My first daughter then, and I was able to find some flexible internships that occurred at night and things of that nature. So it was that at that point was good for income and family life balance.
Yeah, it's really great. I think a lot of people are considering a master's degree. And in some schools that's true, they have to quit work, go full time. But you're a great example of what you can do and stay in the field while you're getting your degree. Can you talk about experience, if you don't mind, that maybe helped you in private practice, an experience that helped you now working in the hospital?
Yeah. I do think a lot of my experience, and I was fortunate to join a very trauma-informed child protective service office. And so I think about that a lot because I think that that's a crucial lens to have is to view people as, especially if you're interacting with the child welfare system, you're usually, you had trauma yourself as a parent, and how we approach that can help people. So when my bachelor's, my post-bachelor's experience in child welfare really helped me see the real-time effects of trauma, intergenerational trauma. and that experience. I do think that child welfare is difficult to do even with the most supportive environment, but it's very hard to do if the environment's not as supportive. So I think that, once getting to see that and reading people's history really informed my later approach to, when I see an adult therapy client, wanting to go back and see what kind of things they ran into along the way, helping them with it. So I think that was a big part of my experience for sure.
I think that's vital. I think sometimes people forget or don't know that you can really draw on experiences that are not exactly metaphoric, to the one you're in. They might say, for example, well, you're working with kids, now you're working with adults. So your point's a great one, though. Well, yeah, those adults were kids, though. And if I knew how to deal with a traumatized kid, I can talk about traumatic events in that person's childhood. Thanks.
Yeah.
How you talk about it a bit, but could you talk a little bit about how long did it take you from your bachelor's in sociology to getting your MSW?
Yeah,
I think you did a bit already with the 5 years, but it sounds like there were years in between of working with a BA.
Yeah. So I graduated Grand Valley in 2010, and I believe I was enrolled in Eastern's program by 2014, I believe, which is why I'm shaking if I graduate 2019 or 2018. But yeah, I did about 4 years of bachelor level work before I decided to get my master's. And I think that for those that are listening to this or considering this approach, my experience is that one approach is you get your bachelor's and you do some work, and then that really informs your master degree. And I think that's absolutely true. I think that listening and going through the content with my child welfare and other experience, really did enhance the material, bring some real life examples. It wasn't as theoretical. In terms of when I got my master's degree, how did employers rank, what they were going to pay me? I think unfortunately, a lot of employers they just want to know when you got your master's degree. So I got mixed results on how much employers want to add my bachelor level experience. Sometimes I've gotten Michigan Medicine did recognize at least half of the experience. Other employers not so much. But that's kind of the trade-off is you will absolutely get a lot in a clinical sense before getting your master's, but it doesn't always translate, right away, to experience and pay.
Yeah, and I think a lot of social workers go through that. I think it's unfortunate because when you get your MSW, then that first client you see upon the MSW for a guy like you who's had years of experience in child welfare is going to be a much richer, brainier experience clinically, right? Yeah. Than a person that goes right through. I'm not being critical that folks go right through, but I want folks that hear this or watch this video to realize that some people do well going right through. And some of us, you and me, I think, do better to kind of get our feet wet and figure out how it's going on. And what we bring then is a richness of experience from having worked right in the field, not thought about it, not just read about it, but actually done it. Yeah. Bravo to you. Yeah. What drew you to social work? I think you alluded to that a bit, but what drew you to social work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that most people that are interested in social work, they usually will start by saying they have a desire to help others. And I think that I think it was initially very attractive to me, about being, I can get paid and help others. And that's a pretty satisfying, life and premise. And I still stand behind that. I've kind of come throughout the years to see that many people who enter any kind of helping field, usually I think our field and there's studies that back this up, they usually have overcome some type of hardship themselves and they want to help other people through it. So I think that resonates for many of us. And so, I think that I have no shortage on, purpose of work or the ability to get meaning from what I do. That's never been a problem in this field. That's great.
Do you think some of those same factors keep you in the work? Or is there something else that keeps you in the work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and even like the studies show that like for many of us, like there's an aspect of psychological wellness in terms of appropriately helping people, and I think part of what we grow and learn from is, to where is that invisible line? It feels invisible at first, but like how much you can help someone, you got to walk right up to it and then they've got to do the rest. And you won't always know that when you start the field where that is. And I've had my learning journeys, but once you find it and you help people within the reasonable, sustainable amount, right? I definitely think that keeps me going. And I have friends that work in different fields and they at points have had struggles with like feeling like their work has meaning. And I just think that's a very like great part about our field for sure.
It's really true. I have a couple of friends who are not in the human services healthcare fields, and they'll say that too. They sometimes aren't sure what the meaning is. And especially as they age, they start to think, I got to do something that has meaning. Whereas I think social workers, and you and I are good examples, I think, have meaning every day. Now, the meaning sometimes is paired with pain or frustration, right? But there's meaning every day. Yeah. Do you have a sense, Adam, about the demand for social workers? You got a sense of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think probably demand's as high as it ever has been. I think I just heard on NPR that the Detroit police responded to 15,000 mental health related calls. I believe that they're forming, a different department or division. I don't want to speak out of turn, but they may have even been talking about a whole non-armed division regarding that. But, wherever there are social problems, there's going to be a need for social workers, and I think that one part of our field is like you see us expanding into libraries, into police settings. Yeah. And so there's really not a venue where you probably couldn't, benefit from the use of a social worker. So I've never had a problem finding job opportunities or postings or anything of that nature. So I would definitely say demand's high.
I think it is too. I would agree with you. It's probably the deepest and the longest workforce shortage we've seen in social work in my career. So I think I always tell people, if you want to go into a field where there's great work that's meaningful and there are positions, this is the one. My last question is, are you aware of things that can help people get into social work and stay in, stipends, loan repayment, et cetera? Are you aware of such programs?
Yeah. So I participated in one, which is less well known, which is the loan repayment program through the National Health Service Corps. So MHTTC. Yeah. And basically it's a program designed to get, highly qualified professionals, specifically mental health professionals like social workers, masters in psychology, nurses, and doctors, into underserved populations and clinics. So I once I got fully licensed, which is a parameter of the program, they want fully licensed therapists and clinicians to go work at these high need sites. I was able to join Packard Health, the federally qualified health center that was enrolled in this program as a site, and I applied to be in it. And they gave me $50,000 up front to repay my student loans. So you sign a contract for 2 years, and you have to stay at that. You have to work the full 2 years at a high need site in order to keep that money. I think that was a big part of it for me is knowing that I'm entering a helping field. And all helping fields in some ways don't have problems with wages not being what the worth we deliver. But having a program that I knew was going to at least eliminate that debt for me was a big one. And I try to talk about the National Health Service Corps program a lot. Many people know the 10-year forgiveness, and that's great and fine, but I wanted something quicker. I'm 4 or 5 years post master's degree and was able to take care of the student loans. So that was pretty cool.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think a lot of the ones that are most well known, you're right, are the 10-year payoff. And the word is out, unfortunately, for a lot of those that folks don't make the 10 years and they don't get the loan repayment. National Health Service Corps is something that we talk about a lot. I'm glad you do too. I think it's especially because it's upfront and you immediately get loan reduction, and you have a job right in your practice and in high needs areas, which is what kind of the social workers we thrive on. So thanks for sharing that. Do you have any final comments, Adam, you want to share?
I think that I think we talked about the meaning aspect, and I think that we've talked about the gathering education aspect. I think that most, we probably both know there's different views on this, but I think that I don't know if I talked enough about individual therapy and the
Please do.
demand
Please.
that I think for that. So there's a tremendous need for and desire for individual therapy. Most of my therapist friends have talked about how they're turning away patients and things like that. And so the need for skilled mental health individual therapists is very high. And I think that right now we're seeing stigma about therapy to be very low. And so I think that a lot of people with master's and social work degrees, may end up doing private practice. And I have found the pay and compensation to be good if you're looking to raise a family or have a good work-life balance. I think that sector of our field has been good, and not many people know that in Michigan, you can be a therapist through a couple different degrees. So a master's in social work is probably the most dominant type of therapist in Michigan, but you can get a master's in psychology and other ones. But there's some confusion over there that I want to just make sure people know that when you get the master's in social work, you can do this, you can be an individual therapist, or you can do all these other jobs. Whereas some of the other degrees, they tend to be mostly, almost exclusively individual therapy. But I think that part of our field is going pretty well. And I think more and more of us have become entrepreneurs or worked at like a private practice setting and things of that nature. So just wanted to say some of that.
I'm glad you did. And I think it sounds like you're a good example of how you can have both those hunks of your life going on and have a private life with a family all at once. So Adam, I want to thank you a lot. I think folks will really appreciate the wisdom that you've shared. And again, we're working to help people understand what social workers do and how it works and what the attraction is. So thanks an awful lot and best of luck in your practices. Thanks much.
Absolutely. Thanks for this. Appreciate it.